Amen. All right, guys. Well, you guys know, if you've been coming for quite some time, I always like to start off the year with just kind of like a outlook or overview, if you will, of 2023. And so that's what I'm going to do today. And I've entitled this message, A Call for Discernment in 2023. And so I want to kind of just talk about this. So I hope you have good notes. I was telling my wife, we're going to go through a lot of scripture. So you're going to have to write them down, and I'm going to try my best to stick to the notes that I have here, because I want to be able to get all of this out. I want you guys to really be able to hear. I mean, and I know you guys do. I even encourage you that after we go to today's message to maybe go back and listen to it again, because it's hard to kind of get it in one sitting. And I do that. When I listen to a message, whether it's John MacArthur or Vodi Bakum or anybody, I like to listen to them a couple of times. I know some of you guys do that as well. I'll listen a couple of times. And there's a lot going on, within the church. Our little group of circles that we have as men, we'll send each other videos, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the body of Christ that some of it will blow your mind away. Some of it will give you, will make you just want to cry. And others will, some of it can be encouraging as well, but it's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world. A lot going on. And so, I want us to kind of be aware. And so I've entitled this A Call for Discernment. So I want you to have your spiritual ears on point, like if you got to, pay attention to me, stand up, do some jumping jacks or whatever. I want you to really be able to hear what I've prepared for you on today, because I'm titling this A Call to Discernment. And so I hope it'll find hearts that are ready to receive, if you will. Okay. All right. So most of you know, like I said, I like to talk about going into the new year with a biblical perspective and outlook, because we're still in what's known as a post-COVID world. And we know the world changed in 2020. Nobody can deny that. You know that. Everything changed in 2020. And I'm not talking about the pandemic. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the society itself. I mean, look at the debt, look at the world, look at where we are now. Look at some of the crime, the war, the hostility, the back and forthness that you see with the racial issues. All of these things are going on in the world, guys. And so I think we would be remiss if we think that the world is just the same way it was in 2019 or 2018. It's not. And so that's what we can say. So here's one thing we can also say, that one thing is certain, that each passing year brings us closer to the reality of the return of Jesus Christ. We know that. So when we talk about that the return of Christ is close, well, it's closer than it was last year. It's closer than it was yesterday. It's closer than it was in 2019. So each passing year, the return of the Lord gets closer and closer. But also with the return of the Lord comes the complete destruction of the world as we know it. Do you all guys understand that? That with the return of Christ comes the complete destruction of the world that we know. That is also a part of the return of Christ. And so I want to go to Matthew chapter 16. Look at Matthew chapter 16. And like I said, I'm going to go through these. I want you to write them down. I want you to be able to kind of follow us as best as you can. But I'm going to be moving rather quickly with these as we go through it. Matthew chapter 16, look at verses 1 through 4. I want you to listen to it. It says, Matthew chapter 16, verses 1 through 4. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees came to test him. They asked him to show them a sign from heaven. And he answered them, this is Jesus speaking, when it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be a stormy day, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. So he left them and departed. Now, here's the deal. This is not the first time, but the second time the religious leaders asked Jesus to show them a sign from heaven. In other words, they came to Jesus and said, show us a sign from heaven. Now, why do you think they wanted a sign from heaven from Christ? What are they asking for? Well, they're literally saying, well, if you give us a sign from heaven, something dramatic, something convincing, we believe you. In other words, they're really accusing Jesus of not doing enough to kind of show them that he's the Messiah. Now, would you believe that? That had Jesus not done enough to prove that he was the Messiah? No, he'd already done enough. And so that's why he says no sign will be given. As a matter of fact, you can find that discourse in Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 through 39, that says, then some of the scribes and Pharisees answer him, saying, teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. There it is again. But listen how Jesus answered. He answered them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. Notice he says the same thing again. So can anybody just take a guess? When he says the only sign that will be given to that generation is the prophet Jonah, what would be that sign? Anybody know the story of Jonah?
Yeah, you think for Christ going dying for 3 days
and being resurrected. You can see a picture of so Jesus says the sign that's going to be given to you is that the son, just like with Jonah, who was in the belly of the fish for 3 days, the Son of Man will be in the earth for 3 days and then he'll rise again. That's the sign. But there were multiple signs that Jesus gave that generation to prove that he was the Messiah. See, I want us to see from these verses that Jesus held the religious leaders accountable for their condition of spiritual blindness. Did y'all recognize that? How does he hold them accountable? Because he says, you can discern the weather, but you couldn't discern my time. You could discern the weather, but you couldn't discern the times that you were living in. Jesus doesn't give them a pass because they failed to not live in reality, but because they deliberately chose to live in complete ignorance of the time that they were living in. They didn't recognize it. If you study out the Old Testament, it was not a secret when the Messiah would show up. As a matter of fact, do you know in Daniel chapter 9, Jesus gives the exact time through the prophet Daniel of when he would show up. From the time that the walls were rebuilt to Jerusalem, Jesus said, the angel told Daniel that there will be how many years? 183 years. 483 years. That was the time. So watch this. If you were any type of historian, from the time they rebuilt Jerusalem, you could have started counting. You say, well, man, who's going to do that? You want to know how we got proof that that was done? The wise men. The wise men came from the east. You know what the east is? They came from Persia. You know who was over Persia? Who was over the wise men? Go read the book of Daniel. Daniel was placed over the wise men at the time of the Medes and the Persians. And so guess what? Daniel told them of this prophecy. It just channeled down all the way through Persian history to where the wise men knew that this was the time of the king to be born. Furthermore, he was born in Bethlehem. You had all these things that happened on that night. There were multiple signs to show that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. So here's the deal, guys. If it is true of the people of Israel that Jesus held them accountable for knowing his first coming, how much true is it that he's going to hold his church accountable for knowing his second coming? Are y'all still with me? If he held them accountable, is he going to hold us accountable? Now keep going with me, guys, with this. For most professed Christians, the second coming of Christ is really not on their radar screen. You want to know why? Because their lives are so entangled in this world. For most Christians, the second coming of Christ is not even on their radar screen. We have so many distractions and so many things going on in this world that, to be honest with you, the return of Christ is the last thing that most people are thinking about. If you ask some Christians, they're not even looking forward to it because they are comfortable in this world. Just like what happened with first century Israel. They were comfortable in the world that they lived in. For the most part, the Jews were comfortable. Now, we know there were a remnant of Jews who were waiting on the Messiah. We learned about that in Luke chapter 2, right? Anna, Simeon, and Mary and Joseph, Zechariah and Elizabeth, all those who were waiting on the consolation of Israel. So guess what? They were waiting. We also know there were those who were what? Crying out to God because they knew they had no righteousness of their own. They knew that they needed a Savior. There were those in Israel that were doing that. For the most part, though, Israel was comfortable under Rome. The Pharisees were comfortable. The Sadducees, the Jewish leaders were comfortable. And for the most part, we can take that same attitude today. Most people are comfortable because they enjoy the world that they live in. So the return of Christ is really not on their radar screen. As a matter of fact, I heard this and I think it's so funny. You know, we talk about amillennialists. Those are people who don't believe in a millennial. You have premillennialists. Those are people who believe that the tribulation will come before the millennial reign of Christ. But then the new joke is you have people who are panmillennialists. They believe that it'll all pan out in the end. You know, you ain't got to worry about it. It'll just all pan out. I don't know how it's going to end, but hey, we know it's going to end. They just kind of just go their life. It'll all pan out one way or the other. I don't have to worry about the details. I'm telling you guys, most people think like this. But here's the deal, guys. But Jesus held first century Israel accountable for their spiritual blindness to the prophetic times that they were living in. First century Israel, as of today, was the most privileged and blessed generation of all humanity. Why? Because they lived during a time when the God of creation actually walked the earth. There is no generation in the history of humanity that was more blessed than that generation. Have you ever thought about that? I know we love all our comforts. We got cell phones, we got Instagram, we got Facebook, man. We got all this stuff, DoorDash, and we think, no, we got to be the most blessed. No, at the time, the most blessed generation to ever live is first century Israel. Can you imagine having God in the flesh walking among you? Can you imagine that? Well, watch this, guys. However, the sad and tragic reality is that first century Israel was so blind to the reality of the times, they were so apathetic to the prophetic times that they were living in, that here's the deal. They rejected their Messiah. If they were that blind to reject him who came in the flesh, how much more do you think that we could possibly be blind to reject to not even be aware of his second coming? Because I know some of you will think, man, if I lived during that time, I would have been ready. I would have known that it was Jesus. I would have known. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. No, you would not. If you really be honest, you wouldn't have recognized he was Christ, because he didn't come with a halo on his head. He wasn't doing the things that they wanted him to do. Nobody would have recognized it. But I want you to think about it at the same time that we're living in now. Could it be possible that that same apathy is now running into the church now? I hope you can hear me, guys. Despite the clear and unmistakable evidence of numerous signs and wonders and miracles that Jesus did among them, they still missed the day of their visitation. Listen to Acts chapter 2, verse 22. Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. Notice how Peter starts his sermon. He says, men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God. How? With mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst. And I like how Peter ends it. As you yourselves know. In other words, it was no secret. Jesus came and virtually banished sickness from Palestine. He healed all who came to him. He walked on water. He calmed the storm. He raised the dead. He opened the deaf ears. How much more? Even Nicodemus tells us in John chapter 3, what does Nicodemus tell Jesus? We know that you are a man from God. Well, how can Nicodemus say that? Because no man does the things that you do except he be from God, or God be with him. They knew it. They knew who he was. They just flat out rejected it. I want you guys to hear this. Why am I saying this? Because spiritual blindness is not because of a lack of signs. It is the default condition of fallen humanity because of sin. We don't need any more signs in the church. We don't need any more. We don't need any more foolishness. We don't need any more of that, guys. And the church is crazy with signs and wonders. We don't. The reason why I'm saying, well, man, the reason why people not accepting the power of God because we ain't got no signs going on. People not getting saved because we ain't got no signs. We ain't got the power with us. That's a lie. Because spiritual blindness has nothing to do with a lack of signs. It has to do with the condition of the fallen heart. I'm about to go through some scriptures. Listen to these scriptures very carefully. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's Genesis chapter 6. That's at the very beginning of creation, Mom. What did God see with the fallen human heart? That every intention of the heart was what? Continually evil. Listen to Genesis. Somebody said, well, that was before the flood. What about after the flood? Well, God takes care of it after the flood. In Genesis chapter 8, verse 21, listen to what he says here. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. All right. So even after the flood, this spiritual blindness continued. Listen to Psalms chapter 53, verses 2-3. God looks down from the heaven on the children of men to see if there is any who understand, who seeks after God. They have all fallen away. Together they have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. That's Psalms. God looks down to heaven. Is there anybody that understands? This is the indictment against humanity. Listen to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 19. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. The way of the wicked is deep darkness. The fallen humanity is so blind that they don't even know what they're stumbling over. We're living in a world today where we are putting laws in place that we don't even recognize the danger of what we're doing. Are y'all hearing me? We think it's okay. We don't see the danger. We don't see the policies. We don't see. Some of you maybe was celebrating a $1.7 trillion, even the name of ominous bill was passed by Congress. $1.7 trillion for a country that's already $31 trillion in debt. Think about that. Think about what we're talking about here. This is how spiritual blind humanity is as a whole. And guess what, guys? You guys can hear me. Even us as believers, we think nothing of it. No, it's not going to affect me. That has nothing to do with me. That's just what they're doing down in Congress. It's amazing how when the prices started going up, think about it, when they were initially going up, you didn't feel anything. But if you be honest today, don't you recognize it? Aaron? We normally eat out on Friday. That's always our thing. Nobody cooks. We get some. We're recognizing the prices now. I told Lizzie, I said, I got you a 10-piece wing combo and mama 6 wings, and they cost me $27. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, guys. That's the time. You go out to eat today, you ain't walking out there spending $50.
Oh, no.
I'm talking about Chili's. We're not talking about going to the nice places. Have you seen the grocery prices? Now you're starting to feel it. But again, I'm saying this where it says that the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They don't even know what they stumble. We don't see it. We never recognize it. When we were getting those stimulus checks, we never recognized it. All you know, the money was coming in. pat in that pocket. We never recognized it.
You gave it right back.
You see, this is what I'm talking about. Listen to John chapter 1, verses 9 through 10. The true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. The true light is Jesus Christ. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Watch this, Lindsay. Yet the world did not know him. The world does not know Christ. The world does not know God. The world does not know spiritual truth. Romans chapter 1, verse 19. I've read this so much, you guys ought to know this by heart. For what can be known about God is plain to them. How? Because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. There are no atheists. There's no such thing as an atheist. They're without excuse. Creation is proof that there is a God. And not only is there a God, creation is proof of the eternal power and nature of that God. How can we see the nature of God from creation? Because God didn't put us so close to the sun we all burn up. He didn't put us so far away we freeze to death. How come humanity ain't living on Mercury? We want to. Elon Musk want to go to Mars. How come we ain't on Mars? Because God said, I didn't put you on Mars. You're going to go to Mars and die. Why are we not in Jupiter? Jupiter has no surface. It's a gas giant. Why are we here? Why is the sun the size that it is? Why is it not bigger? We'd all die, guys. Do you realize if the earth was just, go study this out from scientists. If it was just, I mean, they talk about not even a mile, just close, more than a little bit under a mile closer. We'd all burn up. We would die.
Amazing.
You see what I mean? So from that, we can see the goodness of God. We can see the goodness of God, Nancy, Aaron, on how he created us. He created us with self-healing replication. Our bodies can heal itself. Isn't that amazing? You can cut yourself, and over time, that cut can... That's a good God. Do y'all get that? He could have just made it where you cut yourself and it just stay open forever. You just got gashes all over you. Good luck. And we don't think like that, because we can look at animals and they'll just be hurt. You know, have you ever seen those animal channels, or you'll see where the animals are fighting and you'll see like the lion will get totally maimed? He don't go to no doctor. You don't see the lion that's coming, oh, you poor baby, sit down. No, he just walk off. He walk around forever looking like just maimed all up, man. But that's not how God does with us. See, you see how creation can teach us something about God. I spent too long on it, but you had to see that though, guys. And it says in verse 21, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish heart was darkened. This is humanity. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. Listen to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. It says, the natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God. Here's the big one. For they are folly to him, and he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. The natural man can't even comprehend spiritual truth. Did you know that? Did you know prior to you getting saved, or even for some of you that are saved, if you're still natural, you don't understand spiritual truth. You think that everything is just going fine. That that history is not going somewhere. That's blindness, ladies and gentlemen. That's blindness. You know, think about when we were in school. You would sometimes think that when the teacher is teaching this subject, where are we going with this? She's teaching it in a way because we're going somewhere with this. Aaron went through medical school. Nancy went through, when they went to all those little medical things where you had to go through. There was a reason why you start here to by the time you get to that last year of medical school, if you didn't get all that first stuff at the beginning, Aaron, you probably was lost, probably flunked. It's the same way like when we was in seminary, they give you all this writing stuff. And you were like, man, I'm so sick of writing. Why I got to write? Why it's got to be 20 pages? Why it's got to do this? So by the time you get to that last year, If you didn't master how to write early on, guess what?
That's right.
That professor gave you that paper back, man, it was red. And then you go to that doctoral program, man, when you know, hey, man, I'm not tooting my horn, I can write. But when that first thing for that doctor, he said, this is master's level writing. I need doctoral level writing. I'm like, well, what is that? I thought I did something good. I mean, he just destroyed the paper. Wow. You see what I mean? So there's a progression there. And that's all I'm trying to get you to see is that there's a progression even in how we come into Christ, but there's a progression on how we get to where we are now. For some of us, man, we should be well past. We should be well on meat. And guys, I'm not talking about no soft meat. I'm not talking about boiled chicken. I'm talking about some of you guys have been saved so long, you could be eating ribeyes. I mean, filet mignon. That's the word you should be at now. You should be able to teach others these things. Because you're no longer the natural man, where these things are foolish to them. In Ephesians chapter 4, listen to what it says. I think this is a good summary. Ephesians 4:17, it says, now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must not no longer, walk as the Gentiles do. How do they walk? In the futility of their minds. Why is that? They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardness of their heart. What all these verses are clearly revealing to us is that humanity as a whole is completely blind to God, blind to truth, and blind to reality. That's the truth, guys. They're blind. If you have family members and friends who don't know Christ, they're blind to truth. If you have Christians that claim to be Christians, but they have no real connection to God or anything, they're blind. They're blind. Guys, there are three things that the Bible reveals to us that contribute to the totality of our spiritual blindness. Number one, our own sin. What? Our own sin. There are three things that contribute to the totality of our blindness. Number one, it's our own sin. You want to know why we're blinded? We're blinded by our own sin. Do y'all understand that? One of the things that I have to be humble about with myself is that the reason why I can be blind to spiritual truth is because of my own sin. I don't want to believe it. I've gotten comfortable in how I am. Are y'all getting that? What is the second reality? Number two, it's the God of this world, Satan. You also have him working out there. What does he do? 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. How? To keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is in the image of God. So not only do you have your own sin to contend with, you also have the work of Satan working to keep you blind. You do get that. You do understand that our world is set up to where you do not know the truth. I hope I don't have to repeat that when the news media says it, don't believe it. I hope you're smart enough to recognize that. I hope you got to. You have to recognize this because Satan has designed this world to keep you blind. That's the whole design of it. Every part of the world system, that's Satan's job. But watch this, you also have God's divine judgment. Listen to what it says here in John chapter 12. This is Jesus speaking. In John chapter 12, verses 39 through 40 says, therefore, they could not believe. For again, Isaiah said this. Listen to this. God has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. That's called judicial blindness. Do you realize it came to a point, do y'all hear me, that God blinded the eyes of Israel? Okay, you don't want to believe? Guess what, auntie? You will not believe. That's scary. Romans 1 talks about that. Anybody know what part of Romans 1, when you follow the progression? That's the reprobate mind. To where that's a mind that does not function right. You think we there? You think we're close to it now? You think we can see it in society? A mind that just doesn't function right? Listen to what it says over in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And this verse always scares me. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 11 says, therefore God sends them a strong delusion so that they, listen to this. Therefore God sends them a strong delusion so that they may believe what is false. Why in the world would God do that? Are you ready, Lindsay? In order that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. That is called judicial blindness, where God says, you want to believe a lie? You will not believe the truth. You're going to believe the lie so that I can keep you under condemnation because you didn't want to believe the truth. Guys, spiritual sight, spiritual understanding, spiritual awareness is not something that is natural to humanity. Do y'all understand that? We can't naturally see reality. And I know when I say this, I'm looking at a bunch of smart people. And I know that can be offensive. Because we're not dumb here. All of us are very intelligent people. And when I'm telling you that it is not natural for you and I to really see reality for what it is. Do you guys see? We see what we want to see. We see what we want to see. That's the condition of the fallen heart. And all I'm here to tell you guys is, therefore, most people tend to live their lives in this world as if this is all there is and this is all that will ever be. They may not flat out reject spiritual reality, but they live and conduct their lives in the world as functional atheists. They live their lives like there is no God. Or, at best, they live their lives as functional deists. Anybody know what a deist is? Deists believe in a God, but they believe that God has kind of left society to man. In other words, I believe in God, but he ain't got nothing to do with my life. So I really live my life making my own choices, my own decisions, my own things, but I do believe in God. That's a lot of Christians. You don't bring God into your decision making. You don't bring God into your finances. You don't bring God into your child rearing. You don't bring God into your career. This is most Christians. And guys, the Bible clearly talks about this. Somebody says, well, man, that sounds really hopeless. Well, listen to what Jesus says to the people in John chapter 9, verse 39. Jesus says this. Listen to what Jesus says. This is why I say you got to know the biblical Jesus. Jesus tells the people, for judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Do you get what Jesus just said there? And if you go follow that story, Mom, if you go read it in its entirety, the Pharisees heard him. And they said amongst themselves, is he talking about us? Is he saying we blind? And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, yeah, if you had said you were blind, then you would see. But because you say you see, your blindness is complete. Your blindness is complete. Jesus said, I came into this world for that. Spiritual sight and spiritual understanding and spiritual awareness, guys, is something that Jesus gives. Why do you think Jesus opened the eyes of the blind? He literally opened the physical eyes of the blind people. What was that to show you? Only blinded eyes, spiritually blinded eyes, can be opened by Christ. He physically opened blind eyes, opened a blind man. Stevie Wonder opened his eyes. He physically opened blind eyes. But what was that to show us? That we can go out there and open up blind eyes, you can go, no, ain't nobody opening up no blind eyes. Y'all, but I saw on Benny Hinn thing that a blind person came down there and they could see. They could see. How you know you're blind? I love Jesus' miracles because he did his miracles in front of unbelievers, people who were skeptics.
That's true.
You get what I'm saying? He didn't do his miracles with the music playing and hallelujah, hallelujah. You know, he didn't do his miracles like that in that type of environment. He did his miracles in hecklers, Pharisees waiting for him to fall flat on his face, people who did not want to believe. That's where Jesus did his miracles. So when we say he opened a blind eye, he opened a blind eye. Jesus wasn't healing headaches, psychosomatic sicknesses, things that nobody can, back pain. Now, I'm not saying I can't prove you had the pain when you came. Okay. You know, that's like they tell us if you want to get, well, I can't say that on thing. But you know, it's like you go to the doctor and the doctor said, what's going on? I got ringing in my ear. Okay. I know that. And then they test it and say, well, I just don't see anything, but I still hear it though. What do you do at that point? How can I tell you not? You can't. These are things that cannot be proven. Jesus wasn't healing those things. He was healing dead people. People with leprosy.
Right.
Blind eyes. People who could not walk. Paraplegics. Why, guys? Because that is to show you that only Jesus can change the true spiritual condition of mankind. That's all I'm trying to get you to see. And then he says this in Matthew chapter 13. Y'all still with me? In verses 10 through 13. Listen to what it says here. The disciples came to him and said, why do you speak to them in parables? Good question. And listen to what Jesus says. I speak to them in parables so that they can understand. Don't you see I'm a great storyteller? Guys, I'm telling you, this is how you preach. This is the homiletics that I want to teach you. You got to give a good story. This is why. No, that's not what Jesus tells them. Notice what Jesus says on why he speaks in parables. The answer is going to blow you away. He answered them, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to one who has more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Wow. Jesus says, I speak to them in parables. Watch this, Elder Charles, so they will not understand. Do y'all hear that? What amazes me, though, the ignorance of preachers. Because I've heard preachers say, this is why Jesus taught in parables, man. You know, he takes an illustration of something that you can clearly understand and you can get what he's saying. That ain't what Jesus said. No, I speak to you in parables so you don't get it. So the truth can stay hidden. That means that truth is only given by the Spirit of God who wills it to be so to the individual. Jesus says to the disciples, unto you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom. So basically, Jesus categorizes humanity in two groups. You have, number one, the blind who will never see, and number two, the blind who are made to see by the inward work of the Holy Spirit. Those are the two groups. That's it. Because in Matthew chapter 13, verses 16 through 17, here's what Jesus says. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. Wow. It's a gift, guys. And I think one of the best biblical illustrations of this spiritual blindness and awakening is the conversion of the Apostle Paul. Do y'all remember what happened to Paul on the Damascus Road in Acts chapter 9? Remember when he was there? Remember he fell off his beast. He was going there to persecute the Christians, and then he fell back because he saw a great light shine from heaven. But do you hear what it says? See if you can catch what this verse is talking about. In verse 7, in Acts chapter 9, verse 7, it says, the men who were traveling with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. Did you catch that? They heard the voice, but didn't see anyone. Now, I want you to think about this. They heard it, but they didn't see. The word there for see is not like saying they didn't see a person. It's they didn't understand what was being said. We understand this. Have you ever been in a crowded restaurant? Have you? And you're talking to the person at your table, or you have a group at your table. You're talking, you're hearing their conversation, right? Aren't you hearing words all around the room? Mm-hmm. But can you understand anything they're saying? Mm-hmm. You get it? That's exactly spiritual blindness. You can hear, but you don't understand. You get it? Does that make sense? You can hear, but you don't understand, guys. That's the literally of what he's talking about. As a matter of fact, in Acts chapter 22, verse 9, that's what it says there. To those who were with me, Paul says this: they saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. That's spiritual blindness. Those are people who can hear, Elder Charles. I don't think y'all are getting what I'm talking about. You can be in church and hear,
Right.
but you don't understand. You don't perceive. Well, that's because he ain't preaching it right. No. He could be preaching it right. I could be saying everything. Okay, we went through all of Revelation. I'm telling you where the world is going. I'm telling you where history is heading. I'm telling you where the devil is setting everything up. I'm telling you what's going to happen, and you still live your life like things going to turn around in this world. In this world. You still believe in elections.
Okay.
You still believe that the Republicans got robbed and that's who need to be up there. You still believe that. You still believe that Donald Trump did some good. For my Christian Democrats, you still believe in Joe Biden. You still believe in Black Lives Matter. You still believe that Roe v. Wade was wrong to be overturned. You still believe in all this stuff, even though you know where things are going. Guys, that's spiritual blindness. I want to make it personal. That's spiritual blindness. For you're thinking that this world is going to get better. That's spiritual blindness. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. And theologically, guys, it's called discernment. That's what it's called. Because look at this. Go to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12. It's called discernment. We're going into 2023. We should be ready. And I'm not talking about prepping. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the prep. But we should be ready. We should not be gullible. We cannot do it. Because the Bible is already clear. And I want to give this another illustration with Jesus. Now, this is why it's so good to go through the parables. Because this is Luke. Now, we're going to get to this verse in Luke. I don't know when, but we'll get to chapter 12 in Luke. But look at what it says in Luke chapter 12, verse 54 through 56. Y'all there? Now, you still got Matthew 16. Remember in Matthew 16, what did he say? He talked about the weather. You can discern the weather. This is another occasion where Jesus is going to use that same illustration. In Luke chapter 12, verse 54 through 56, it says, and he also said to the crowds, you see a cloud rising in the west, and you say at once, a shower is coming. And so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat. And it happens. You hypocrites. You know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and sky, but you do not know how to interpret the present time. Sean, that's an indictment. What's the indictment? Because there are two things that Jesus illustrates to the people. Number one, they failed to discern the time that they were living in. And are you ready, Mom? They fail, number two, to discern the threat. You get it? Two things. Not only did they fail to discern the time, they failed to discern the threat. Because what Jesus is saying, with very minimal evidence, you can come to confident and accurate conclusions about natural things. But with overwhelming evidence that he had given to them, they rejected him. Some of you can wake up and your joints hurt. Man, it's going to be cold. And it's cold out there. My wife is like that. You know, she was the barometric pressure. She said, yeah, the barometric pressure is dropping. The barometric pressure. Just off sinuses. Now think about it. I can discern that. But I can't look at everything going on in this world and discern what time we're living in. That's an indictment. You can look outside. Oh, there's a cloud in the sky. It's going to rain. Duh. But you can't look at the overwhelming evidence of what we're living in today and can't think that Christ is soon to return. You get it? That's an indictment, guys. That's why Jesus calls them hypocrites, because they could see the cloud. The cloud represents the time. And then they know it's going to rain. That's the threat. So because you see the cloud, you know it's going to rain. What do, Elder Linda? You make preparations to cover yourself from the rain. How about this? You feel the south wind coming. That's the time. So because you know it's going to be hot, that's the threat. You make preparations to deal with the heat. But you can look at the times that we're living in and you make no preparations to make sure your life is ready to meet him. You're still living your life. I'm still living my life as if Jesus is not going to return. And how many times has Jesus warned, don't let him come back and find you not doing? Are y'all hearing me? We still won't open up our mouth, talk to anybody about Christ. Hello, John. We still have people that we have very good relationships with that we've said nothing about the condition of their lives, and we know they're headed for hell. Somebody says, how dare you say that? They ain't saved and you know it. You know it. I'm not. You know people right now who do not know the Lord. You do. Can I dare say some of them are your friends? Some of them are your family members. Some of them could be your very children, your mother, your sister, your brother. You know the threat, but you say nothing. As if we're all good. I don't want to rock the boat. Guys, I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to myself. We can discern the weather. You said, what's in store for 2023? You know what's in store. You say nothing. People talk to you, Aaron, telling you, oh man, I'm going to do this, all you do. And it's the most asinine and ridiculous things that you like, thinking in your mind, man, boy, they ain't ready for nothing, boy, they don't know what's going on. And you say nothing. This is why God is saying there's a call for discernment. Because if it was natural, Nancy, if you knew they're walking outside that door, there were 15 guys out there with machine guns, and you knew they were outside that door, I guarantee you, you wouldn't let somebody walk out that door. Well, I don't care about the return of Christ. You care about your own family member when they leave the house and when they're going to return. When you're getting off of work, well, I hope for some of you, don't you call? Hey, I'm on the way home. What if your spouse said, I don't care. I'm busy. I got my own stuff I'm worried about, man. Who cares when you get here? It's time to go to counseling. But you know that's how we do Jesus. Jesus gives us all these scriptures on when he's going to return. Who cares? I don't care. I don't need to know about the details. It'll all pan out. That's exactly how we live our lives as Christians. And we go year after year with this same attitude, and one day we're going to hear, come up hither. Are you hearing me, guys? Well, here's the question. Is there any evidence that we have to show us of the times that we're living in?
Yes.
Now, I don't even have to walk through the headlines. I can just walk through the scriptures. Because here's one verse, Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17. Look at verse 26. Luke chapter 17, verse 26. In that verse it says, just as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. So the days of Noah can be described with two words, according to Genesis chapter 6. Corruption and violence. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11 and 12 says, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. Corruption and violence has always been on the earth since the fall, but during the days of Noah, the corruption and violence had perpetuated throughout all of society.
Right.
And Jesus says it will be like the days of Noah during his return. Jesus says that one of the signs of his return is that the time in the world will be like the days of Noah. Is our world filled with violence today?
Yep.
Elder Charles was just giving us a story of a guy who shoots the mechanic because he was test driving his car for his brakes that he came up there to get fixed, but he thought somebody was stealing the car, took out his gun and shot the mechanic because he thought the guy was stealing his car. That's violence, guys. Are you hearing some of the killings that are going on? The rapes, all the things that are going on. Corruption. Would you say we live in a corrupt society? I mean, anybody say that? Anybody seeing the corruption with this Ukraine thing going on? Okay, we have a guy who owns a crypto company. No books. No books on a how many $billion company? I think it was worth what, $40-something billion company. No books. He has no books on the company. Then you find out that he was funneling money to the Democrats and the Republicans, funneling money to Ukraine that was getting money laundered back to the politicians here in America.
Wow.
But he's doing interviews. That's corruption, guys. We live in a corrupt society. We live in a violent society. That's one of the signs. That's one of the signs. That's clear evidence on where we're living today. So with that sign, can we say that we're living in the time of the return of Christ? That's just the days of Noah. And then it goes on to say in verse 27 that they were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. That's the threat. And how was the people in society doing? They were just living their lives, eating and drinking, and those things are just normal everyday activity. What Jesus is saying is they were apathetic.
Right.
During the time of Noah, people saw that the earth was corrupt. People saw that the earth was violent, but they didn't care. They were going on with their lives like nothing happened. We live in that today. We see how violent it is. I just go get another gun. I'm going to protect mine, but we're still apathetic to the times that we're living in. We see the corruption, but yet still we march like good soldiers down to the polls. Get your booties to the polls to make sure you go put your candidate in. And you think that either one of them fools, Raphael Warnock or Herschel Walker, was a good candidate? And some of you spent arguing for Herschel, arguing for Warnock. They're crooks.
That's right.
Joe Biden's a crook, a career politician. Donald Trump is a clown show. Kamala Harris is a disgrace. Mike Pence is a fake. But yet still we'll argue for these people as if they're the savior of the world. We're happy that Elon Musk bought Twitter. But Elon Musk is the same guy that want to put a brain chip in your head to link you up with robots.
Really?
Oh, but he on Twitter. See, that's corruption, guys. That's just going on apathetic like nothing's happening in the world. Nothing to see here. The whole world is blowing up. The earth is on fire. It's all behind us. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see. Somebody says, well, man, that's a lot. Well, he goes on in verse 28. Likewise, just as it was in the days of Lot, They were eating and drinking and buying and selling and planting and building. But on the day that when Lot went out of Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. So it will be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So not only do we have the days of Noah, now the Lord says that the time of his return will also be as the days of Lot. The number one way we could describe the days of Lot is in one phrase: sexual perversion. How do I know that? Jude chapter 1 verse 7 says, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, served as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. Sodom and Gomorrah was engaged in sexual immorality, and the people pursued unnatural desires. Oh, wow. Another sign of the time of the return of Christ is an increase in sexual perversion. Anybody see that in society? Are we a sex-crazed society? Anybody see any sexual perversion going on out there? You can look at Biden cabinet. We have an absolute man who says he's a woman. That's an APRA, and the second highest medical person in the country. Y'all hear this? The Department of Transportation, Buttigieg, homosexual.
Oh, yeah.
Jean Paris, as Tucker says, she's gay.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible press secretary.
Horrible.
This is society. Joe Biden's own son. Has anybody read anything about him? Of course you haven't. Trump's kids. Trump. Sexual perversion. And I ain't even talking about the homosexuality and the lesbianism and the transgender. You didn't know in the $1.7 trillion, they also tried to plug in some money for mutilating children. In other words, having the rights where children, without their parents' consent, to go get these transition surgeries. You don't think that's perverse? Have anybody seen the commercials? Right, just the commercials. They run in the middle of the day now.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody notice? It just be two men, two women. Guys, that's perversion. And Jesus says, oh, that's a sign of the time of my return. But as a Christian, am I going to be able to discern that and recognize that this is the time that I'm living in? Are y'all hearing me? And then notice that Jesus adds something. He says the same thing with marrying and drinking, but what does he add to the days of Lot? They were buying and selling and planting and building. That's talking about commerce. Another sign of the time of the return of Christ is that commerce will increase. But remember, society is going to be corrupt also. So this is going to be corrupt commerce. You get it? If you want to understand what corrupt commerce is, this is commerce that enriches the rich while impoverishing the poor. Do you now know we live in a society that there are two classes, rich and poor? There ain't no middle class. And look at what it says over in James chapter 5 verse 1. Listen to James chapter 5 verse 1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted. Your garments are moth-eating. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you have kept back by fraud, and are crying against you. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord. You have lived on the earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened your heart in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. Wow. James says that's going to be the condition of the elite wealthy in the last day. Recognize how many billionaires were made in 2020? Anybody want to go look at the balance sheet of Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson? Anybody want to go look at how much those CEOs made? Anybody recognize that who's sponsoring most of the commercials today? Sponsored by Pfizer? Sponsored by Moderna?
I noticed that.
Okay. This is the rich. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates. They got all wealthy. You know, now the thing is, oh man, they finally released Trump's tax returns. We get 6 of them. Well, how about you release Nancy Pelosi's? If we're going to release Trump's, how about we release all the Congress people's tax returns? I would love to see Pelosi because she's worth over $100 million. How did she get that being a congresswoman? And if I'm not mistaken, how much Congress people make? About $250,000, $270,000? $100 million? Boy, that's a good gig. Guys, this is the condition of the world. What I'm trying to show you, there are clear signs to show us where we're living in. We got to discern it. And then here's another thing about the days of Noah and Lot. You know the story. What does Abraham do in Genesis chapter 18? He says, if there be 50 righteous people, will you spare the city? How many did how many did Abraham get it down to? 10. Anybody know? 10. So what would be another sign? When Jesus says it'll be like the days of Lot. Abraham got it down to 10. God still destroyed the city. So what did that mean? Say it again, Raymond.
It wasn't 10 righteous people.
It wasn't 10 righteous people. So if Jesus says it's going to be like the days of Lot, what is he telling us, guys? Another sign is that there are not going to be many righteous people on the earth during the time of the return of Christ. Exactly, Raymond. A lot of people who profess, but not a lot of real people. Wow. Wow. And this was true, watch this, guys, during Jesus' first coming. Do you know during the time when Jesus came in his first coming, there were over 1 million Jews? But by the time Jesus left the earth, he had 12 disciples and about 500 followers. And then by the time we get 50 days later on the day of Pentecost, in Jerusalem in the upper room, 120 were left. 120 followers out of millions of Jews. That was his first coming. But you think it's 2.2 billion Christians right now. You think Pope Benedict has met Jesus. No, guys. Everybody who say they're righteous ain't righteous. Everybody who say they're Christian ain't Christian. And you want to know something? That's a sign of the time. And then we go to Matthew chapter 24. You can go read that yourself. Jesus gives us more signs of the end of the age. He says that what? Many are going to come in my name saying I'm the Christ. They're going to lead men astray. You're going to see deception coming in. Then he says there are going to be wars and rumors of wars. The only war you know about is Ukraine. Do you know that there's war gearing up between China and Taiwan? Croatia is about to go to war with, I forgot the country, Serbia again. You got India rattling against Pakistan again. You got Israel, who just elected Netanyahu back into office. And Netanyahu said the first thing on his docket is to make sure he take care of Iran, so Iran don't get the bomb. So you got that brewing. You got China making links with Saudi Arabia. You got America fighting a war against Russia through Ukraine. But Jesus says you will hear wars and rumors of wars, and you still think we ain't in the end times. Nation will rise up against nation. That's ethnic group against ethnic group. Are we not seeing that? Kingdom against kingdom. We don't see that? Yes, we do. Famines, earthquakes. I'm not even going to talk about the famines and the earthquake. Go read what's going on in Africa. The locusts. They say the locusts are like biblical proportions, eating whole crops and fields. Earthquakes. Come on, guys. All these are clear indicators of the signs that we're living in. And I'm saying this is a call of discernment. I'm getting ready to end, but I just want to show you, do we have evidence to show that we're in the end? Plenty. And watch this, guys. These are just the signs of the conditions of the world, Aaron. But do you know that there are signs of conditions that are going to be in the church as well? that we can show that we're in the end time. Listen to this. Listen to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 9. But understand this, that in the last days there will come difficult times, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parent, ungrateful, unholy, heartless. That word heartless is the Greek word astorge, which means without family love. Literally, it said people are going to be without family love. Unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. For among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women burdened with sins and lead astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also oppose the truth, being corrupted in mind, disqualified regarding the faith, but they will not get very far, for their folly will be plain to all, and as was that of those two men. What am I telling you guys? What most Christians don't realize, Paul is not talking about the world now. He's talking about what's going on in the church in the last days.
That's true.
The sign is that inside the church there will be an appearance of godliness, but no real power that actually transforms the human soul. Another sign within the church is that they're going to be preaching with no truth, because people will be hearing sermons but never arriving at any truth.
Right.
Another sign is that these preachers who are preaching these sermons will have corrupt minds and are really disqualified from the faith. This is how you get preachers saying, let's sell weed in the church. This is how you get preachers who stop praise service to welcome abortion. These are corrupt men who are disqualified. These preachers are disqualified. They're corrupt. These are all signs of what's going on in the church during the time of Christ's return.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he goes on to say in chapter 4 of 2 Timothy, for the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate to themselves teachers who suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. Again, this is inside the church. People will no longer desire to listen to sound doctrine. Anybody see that today? Put your hand up if you know people who go to church. You do. Have you ever asked them, what y'all talk about? Listen to what they talked about. Today's big mega churches are like Dr. Phil shows. They have a little sitcom before the service. People talking, people doing this. Then the pastor come out there, looking like he may be 22, and he really 60, but he got all the hair like everybody else. The white guy got the strap, his chest all open, taco meat short. I mean, and he out there, just preaching with everything like that. The pants just as tight as they can be. He got biker pants on, biker shirts. The women are singing praise and worship service. They may as well be naked because the skirts are so tight. Everything is just seen out there in the open. This is service.
That's true.
They're doing skits of Thriller in church. This is happening, guys. And we're calling this church. These are country clubs. These are not church. These are havens of hell that are leading people down the path straight to hell. That's a sign of the time, guys. I put this in my notes. Mega churches are nothing more than a sign of the end times. Because it is people heaping up to themselves in large numbers, people that suit their desires. They don't want to hear sound doctrine. Oh, my pastor's doing a series through Luke. Oh, okay. Give me the website. I'll tune in. Nobody want to hear that. Nobody wants to hear anything that's going to actually be sound doctrine. No, it's too much. Again, guys, the scriptures are there to show us of where we are living at in this time. And then the last things I want to say is this. If you go to Revelation, you don't have to go there because you remember the series we did in Revelation 2, Revelation 3, Revelation 2 and 3. Remember I told you that during the time of Christ's return, there are going to be 4 churches present on the earth. You have the church of Thyatira, you have the church of what? Sardis, the church of Philadelphia, and the church of Laodicea. I want you to think about that. Y'all follow me here? So Jesus gives us a picture of what the church is going to look like in the last day. Number one, you have the church of Thyatira. Listen to what Jesus tells that church. I know your works, your love, and your faith and service of patience and endurance, and that your latter works exceed your first. But I have this against you, that you have tolerated that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess and is teaching and seducing my servants to practice sexual immorality and to eat food sacrificed to idol. So this is the sign of false leadership in the church and corrupt teaching in the church that actually promotes sin and not holiness.
Come on, man. That's real talk.
Do we see the church actually promoting sin now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Watch this, guys. This Jezebel, do we see false leadership all over the church?
Mm-hmm.
In certain denominations like the Methodist Church and the Episcopalian Church, the women pastors are going to outnumber the men.
Yeah.
That's false leadership, guys. Okay. Then you have the church of Sardis. Listen to what Jesus says about the church of Sardis. I know your works. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. What is that? This is the sign of the church being entertaining that brings the appearance of spiritual life, but in reality, the church is spiritually dead. You look at some of these mega churches, man, you go to their praise and worship, man, you be like, oh my God, they look so spiritually alive. I mean, there's smoke, they're crying, some of them on their knees. And Jesus says, you look alive, but you're really spiritually dead.
Like a hot mess.
Are y'all hearing this, man? Are we not seeing that? And then the last one is the church of Laodicea. That's an easy one. Here's what the church of Laodicea says, for we are rich. We are prosperous. We have need of nothing. What is that, guys? This is the sign of the church having an appearance of prosperity, an appearance of growth, an appearance of success in the earth to the world standard, but in the eyes of the Lord, it's spiritually blind, poor, naked, and lost. Are we not seeing that today? How many have seen some church campuses that are absolutely breathtaking? Massive. I see. When we were in Dallas, wow. That looked like UGA. I'm not saying about Dr. Jack Graham. I mean, I'm just picking at y'all. He's pretty good. So let me say that. I'm not talking about Dr. But I'm just saying, you know, come here in Atlanta. Go down on Evans Mill. Go take a look at that dandy over there. Go down on Burdett. Take a look at that massive thing over there. Drive a little further, way up in another church, you know, kind of north in Alpharetta called North Point. Take a look at that dandy. These are all dens of sin that teach lies. Church of Laodicea. So, as I close, guys, how are we to live in 2023? We got to be discerning. I think we got enough evidence to show the times that we're living in. And notice this, I didn't use one headline. Because if I start using headlines, oh, here we go. No, I didn't use no headlines. We just went straight Bible. Straight Bible to show the times that we're living in. And so, how are we to live? Number one, Timothy says, Paul tells to Timothy after he says that in chapter 3, you continue in what you have learned. Number one, continue in what you've learned. Don't be distracted. Don't let people come to you and say, well, what's really going on? Well, you need to come here. You need to do this. No, stay planted in the truth. Guys, we do not need numbers. We just need quality of those individuals who seriously want to be ready for the return of Christ Jesus. If you got people like that, come on, bring them on in. But it's not about numbers. It's not about buildings. It's not about any of that. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Let's continue in what we've learned. That's what he tells. That's what Paul tells Timothy. And in 2 Timothy chapter 4, he says, always be sober-minded. Be sober-minded. Be careful this year. Don't listen to everything the media says. Listen with your spiritual ears. Listen. Don't be so gullible. Get your heart out of politics. I hope you guys know that now. Get your heart out of that stuff. Politicians are not the answer. They work for the same Satan. Be sober-minded, guys. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, it says, you are not in darkness. It says, walk as children of the light. Live in the reality of what you know, where the Bible tells us we're going. Get your heart ready. I'm not saying go out there and prep and build some campus in the back, man, where you can go down and hide and all that kind of stuff. Here's the deal. If you ain't prepped already for the last 20 years, you ain't ready.
It's too late.
So forget all this prepping. When it all goes to hell in the handbasket, you're going to have to trust the Lord. Amen. But what you're going to have to prep is your mind. That's why it tells us over in Thessalonians, put on the breastplate of faith. Put on the helmet of salvation. Let your heart be protected with faith. Let your helmet be protected with salvation. That's how you're going to be prepared. Get your mind ready. Get your mind ready for where the wars are going. Get your mind ready for where the prices are going. Get your minds ready for where maybe the jobs are going. Get your mind ready. Because in Revelation chapter 3 verse 10 it says, because you have kept the word of my patience, I will keep you from the hour of trial that's coming on the hurl of the trial. This is my last verse. Luke chapter 21. I want to read it. Verse 34 through 36, last verse. But watch yourselves. Watch yourselves. This is not the time to be trusting in your flesh. This is not the time to be I got it, baby. This is not that time. This is not the time to be leaning to your own understandings. This is not the time to be making rash decisions. This is not the time to be making all these grand things and you haven't really thought about these things. You guys, you got to be sober-minded. You got to be watching where we're going. This is not the time to be doing that right now. Because he says, watch yourselves. Watch this. Lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness. Dissipation and drunkenness. Dissipation, you're just getting tired. Drunkenness, man, you're not thinking straight. Watch this. It says, and the cares of this life. Hello. Don't let the cares of this life wear you down to where it causes you now to where you're not seeing things clearly. How many of man, this world will make you want to make decisions quickly. I got to do something. Anybody ever had that? I got to do something. You know, you're talking to your spouse, man, we got to do something. We got to get this thing together. We got to do something. Now you about to do something stupid. This is why we talk about providence. You have to believe in the providence of God. You have to believe that wherever you are right now is exactly where God has you. You have to trust that. And here's the deal, Aaron, Sean, Lindsay, Kevin, that's hard. Because you could be looking at your life and say, I know we can do something different. But you have to trust that where God has me, this is where he has me. And I will trust him. I'm going to continue to go forward. I'm going to continue to live and do what God has called me to do. But I trust that this is where, even though I know this person said I should jump over here. I know that somebody done threw me this plan. I know somebody got this idea. I know somebody telling me to do this. I know somebody threw that at me. I'm going to trust that where I am right now is exactly where God has. And then it says that day come upon you suddenly like a trap. Watch this, guys. For it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the earth. Listen to verse 36. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. Stay awake. Stay awake. We don't know what the world has for us in 2023. But we know what Christ has for us in 2023. That is for us to stay consistent in the word, to keep this fellowship strong. Guys, these individuals here, these are going to be your best ones to anchor in. Pray with me about this. Give me some counsel about this. This is where the fellowship has got to be going. Because this is what we're going to need. It's not in the big stuff out there. Y'all hear me? COVID took care of that. That changed the whole structure of the church. And remember what I told you? You'll say, man, the devil got all into that stuff. Is it? Because how did God get the gospel spread out in first century Israel? Persecution. He allowed persecution to hit the church. They got them out of Jerusalem so they can get their behinds out of Jerusalem and take it to the utmost parts of the world. God knows how to get his word out. God says, oh, y'all want to build these monasteries and all this stuff? I tell you what I'm going to do. I close it down. And then anybody who's been with me a long time, what did I tell you how church is going to be? It goes in a circle. It's going to come right back to what you see here. Fellowshipping. Amen? So this is what we want to do for 2023, guys. It's going to look bleak for the world. What the saying is, things are looking up because things are looking so bad. For us, we looking up. But for the world, no answers there. No answers, nothing but lies. So I hope you heard this today. I know it was a lot, but you can deal with it. I needed to get it out there. This is our little pre-2023 message. We'll pick up Luke again. And what I'm going to do, because I know we haven't had the Bible studies in a while, I may pick up Ephesians 2, because we're in chapter 6, and I want to finish chapter 6 as well. So I may pick up Ephesians 2. We may interchange a little bit of Ephesians on Sunday too, so I can get Ephesians done as well. But we're going to pick back up with Luke. But I think this was good for you guys to hear this on how to set your mind for 2023. Amen. All right, guys, thank you for joining with us. We want to welcome you guys to subscribe to our page on Facebook, Eternal Purpose Fellowship. Subscribe to our page also, Theology Today 101. If you haven't gotten up there, we did do a summary to the Jeffrey Dahmer. I think it's really good because we talk about how amazing is grace, and I think you want to hear that one. And then you got Believers on a Budget, and then you also have our Facebook page here on Eternal Purpose Fellowship. So make sure you like, subscribe to all those things. Until then, we'll see you again. God bless.